Hi, this is Kristen from the Pros Then Cons team, and today I'm really excited to talk about the pros and cons of breastfeeding. But before we get started, I want to do a quick disclaimer. I'm really not wanting to focus on the health of breastfeeding, like the health aspects for the baby and for the mother, because there's so many great sources out there. So I am just wanting to focus on all the other pros and cons because there are a lot. So to get started, one of my favorite benefits of breastfeeding is that it makes me stop and sit still and be with my baby. I feel like as life is getting really crazy, I have a hard time stopping and being like, oh, I really should focus just on her. And so it gives me 10, 15 minutes every every like 3 hours or so to be like, no, I really need to focus on her. And then it kind of realigns, and then I'm like, okay, maybe I'll read her a book or something like that, so that I am taking time to focus on her. So it's a really good realigning my life moment every couple hours to be like, motherhood's important, I need to be a mom. So another thing is that I really like with breastfeeding is that your baby is less likely to get constipated. So constipation is not fun in anyone, but it's really not fun in a baby because they're just really fussy. So it's really great to have the opportunity to limit that a little bit more by breastfeeding. Another great thing about breastfeeding is the temperature of your milk is perfect. When you pump ahead and store, this really doesn't apply, but when you are just feeding off of you, the temperature will never be too hot that it will burn the baby's mouth, or never be too cold that it gives your baby a stomachache. So that's a really great thing with breastfeeding. Another thing is when you are feeding off of you, it helps to not have as many bottles. So if you're feeding every 3 hours, that means like 8 times in a 24-hour period, you are going to have 8 bottles to clean, and nobody wants to clean 8 bottles. So that is a really great perk of breastfeeding, is you don't have to deal with that. Babies also like the taste of breast milk a lot better. There are many people that have to go and buy several different types of formula to find which one works for their baby, whereas with breast milk, usually they like the taste and they will eat it. So that's a really great perk to breastfeeding. Something else that's a really great perk that I'm really excited to talk to you about is that breastfeeding is way cheaper, and I feel like most people know that, but I have some really exciting numbers for you. So I took 7 different formulas and calculated how much it would be for a 4-ounce bottle, and I was shocked with the price for a 4-ounce bottle. So it's really small. So it could be anywhere from 71 cents to 96 cents with those 7 formulas that I tried, which if you were feeding every 3 hours for a 24-hour period, so that's 8 times in a month, you would spend anywhere from $159 to $209 just on formula. That is a great perk to breastfeeding that I am really grateful for. Another perk to breastfeeding, but not necessarily a reason that you should just breastfeed, is that there are people out there that feel like it's their job to tell you that you're raising your kids wrong, and if you choose formula, that's like the wrong choice. And I hate this, and I think it's ridiculous, but it's a thing. And so to avoid that, if you just breastfeed, you don't have to deal with that. Like I have some friends that I feel like they have to justify almost to me that they're formula feeding, and I'm like, no, like that's your life, that's your choice, you're their parent. Like I leave that in your hands. It's not my place to be like, oh, you should be breastfeeding. But it is really nice because there are people out there that will tell you your opinion, or not your opinion, their opinion, and it's really great just to be like, I'm already breastfeeding, I don't need to worry about all that extra drama and stuff. So that's a good perk of breastfeeding. So now we're moving on to the disadvantages of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding can be really stressful. So I, before I had the baby, I was like, oh my goodness, why on earth is there a lactation specialist? Like, what do they even do? I was really shocked because babies don't always come doing what they should be doing, and sometimes it's hard for them to breastfeed. So my baby needed formula at first a little bit because I wasn't producing enough, and I thought nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, she didn't want to feed off of me. She only wanted a bottle because it was way easier, less work. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, I really want to be able to breastfeed, and I can't breastfeed. And I was just crying on my bed, trying to get a screaming, crazy, hungry child to eat. And it was really stressful. And there's so many other things that can make it stressful, like being in public. I was so I'm so shocked. Like, you go to the supermarket and like, where are you supposed to feed your baby? Like, you can maybe go on a bench, but you either need to figure out how to use a cover, which a lot of babies don't like covers, or you have to do it without a cover, and you get a lot of crazy judgment and stuff like that. So those are options on a bench, or you can go into the bathroom and feed your baby on the toilet. But that is like so messed up, because here's this newborn or this like baby that's really susceptible to all sorts of bacteria, and then you're gonna feed them on a really, really gross, dirty, nasty place, and nobody wants to eat on the toilet. So anyway, that's something that I was like, what? This is crazy. So that's another thing. Another crazy thing that you have to deal with is you have to figure out if you're gonna have a pump. And pumps are really useful. I use my pump all the time, especially at first. Now it's not as much, but it was really helpful. And pumps can be really expensive, but there's a tip. So I didn't realize this, and luckily somebody told me that a lot of insurances will cover a significant amount, if not all, of your pump. So make sure to go through your insurance and see if they'll cover that. Another little tip off to the side is to get like a handheld pump. I was shocked because it's really hard. You're traveling and sometimes it's night, and my husband will be driving and the baby needs food. And so it's really been great to have a handheld pump, and so that I can give the baby food and we don't have to pull off to the side of the road and figure out what to do. And like when they're younger, it's harder to feed them in the car seat because they'll choke, but once they get older, they can handle a bottle in the car seat. So that's a really great tip. I'm really not a big fan of my handheld pump, but please comment below if you guys have a handheld pump that you really like, because that's a great perk to know. Another thing is that breastfeeding can be really isolating. So when I was like a new mom, and I would get invited to a party, and then all of a sudden my baby needed to eat, and I would be like, oh, and she didn't like the cover. I'm not going to feed without a cover just because I am uncomfortable with that. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But I would go into another room and I would feel super isolated for like 10-15 minutes. And motherhood can already be a little bit lonely sometimes, where you don't have a lot like of interaction with people besides your kids. So that has been hard, and that's like an isolation, and it happens in several different situations. Another thing is you need to buy nursing clothes. So if you like shopping, this could be a pro, but it's really hard to find clothes that work for your body during the postpartum period. And so to add that they need to be nursing clothes or things that you can easily nurse with, is really hard. And then you're going to be spending all this money because you're fluctuating so much, and nursing clothes just is another factor. Another thing is you can produce too much or too little. So I know women that produce too much and really they wake up covered in milk or they get engorged and it's really painful. I also know women that produce too little, and I have done that at times during my experience, and it is really stressful because the baby wants food and then you aren't producing enough, and then you get more stressed, and so then you produce less, and it's just a nightmare. So that's something else that can be a negative about breastfeeding. Another thing is that some women, I'm one of them, have to limit chocolate because their baby doesn't respond well to chocolate and gets gassy. So I went all out on Halloween and I ate on her chocolate. And the next day, my baby was crazy. Like, she was screaming for minutes at a time and would not be comforted. So she was super gassy, and so I had to limit my chocolate by a lot. So that has been a really hard thing with breastfeeding. I really hope that you enjoy some of these pros and cons from breastfeeding. If you want to learn more, you can go to the pros and cons website and check out all the information that we have there. Also, it has the chart with all the prices and the brands of those 7 formulas that I picked. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day and that you can check out our website.